Welcome everybody to the Agricultural Resilience Mental Health webinar. My name's Warren Davies, and I'd like to begin today's webinar by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we gather today and pay my respects to the elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people on the webinar today. As I said, my name's Warren Davies, and I'm known as the Unbreakable Farmer. Today's webinar is brought to you as a collaboration by Hort Innovation and AUSVEG. Hort Innovation is a grower-owned, non-for-profit research and development corporation for the Australian horticultural industry. Hort Innovation is built on the vision to create a prosperous and sustainable horticultural industry built on innovation. Today's webinar is, as I said, a proud collaboration with AUSVEG and Hort Innovation, and it's brought to you on the back of the annual vegetable industry seminar. The funds that were raised through that. AUSVEG is the national peak industry body representing the Australian vegetable, potato and onion growers. Today's webinar, we've got a fantastic array of speakers today. I'm very privileged to be on the same webinar with each and every one of these speakers. They're a group of people that I look up to in the work that I do, and I'm very interested to hear their thoughts and opinions on, what has been a tough couple of years in the agricultural and horticultural industries. Life-changing events, I suppose. One in 100-year events, and even on the back of recent rainfall in the last week or so has added a lot of stress and pressure. And so today's webinar is quite appropriate. The structure of today's webinar is I'll be introducing each panel member. There'll be Q&A from the audience at the end. So if you have any questions that come up during the panel discussion, please drop them in the Q&A box, and which the function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll endeavour to answer those them at the end of the Q&A session. Please, if possible, address the questions to a specific speaker, but obviously a lot of the topics that we'll talk about today will probably overlap a little bit anyway. So, each and every one of the panelists will probably chime in at some stage in answering those questions. Just a little bit on myself. As I said, I'm known as the Unbreakable Farmer. That whole journey started out of my own lived experience as a dairy farmer, losing my farm in the millennial drought and having a massive impact on my mental health and well-being. And from there, I began a journey as a speaker, sharing my story around Australia, trying to fulfill my mission, which is to create awareness and education around mental health and well-being in rural communities, to inspire conversations and really to empower people to be able to seek help and seek help in a safe environment that's free from stigma, so nobody feels ashamed to stick their hand up and show strength by doing so. And as I said, today's panelists, we've got a fantastic lineup, and the first panelist I want to introduce you to today is Steph Schmidt, who's the farm life psychologist. She's a farmer, farm wife, and a mum. As the farm life psychologist, Steph is dedicated to empowering farming women and agribusinesses to change the picture of their farming mental health. Steph works with groups, individuals, and organisations to strengthen their well-being, build on resilience, and grow. And even in adversity, Steph also supports rural women through her Navigate Her membership. Steph will speak on her own mental health struggles manifest among young women. Steph, welcome to the webinar today. Can you just tell us a bit more about your story and your background and the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited to be here. I feel like it's like the most epic lineup of people connected in rural mental health. So glad to be here. So for me, I'm a psychologist by training, but I guess a farmer in life. I was a city girl and then met my now husband when I was 19. And so over the last kind of 16 years have really grown a farm, family and business together with him. And we farm about 2 hours north of Adelaide. We do sheep and cropping and really in quite marginal areas. So I know very well the challenges and the pressures that farming life can entail and the uncontrollabilities as well. But I guess for me, I also see that there are so many rewards to the life we live on the land. And I think it's really important that we can highlight the mental health benefits as well in farming and agriculture, not just the challenges. I think if we stick on the challenges all the time, then it's hard to see the benefits. But there's something pretty special about being able to work alongside your husband or your kids. And so that's a little bit about what I'm all about.
Yeah, thank you. It definitely is. And it's something that, I get asked often, would you change anything about your journey? And it's definitely something that I wouldn't change because, there is a lot of benefits to being a farmer, working on the land. And, sometimes you've got to take that good from bad, but you've got to also look after yourself. So thanks for that, Steph. And we'll come back to you with a few questions shortly. The second speaker on today's webinar is Richard Shannon. He's the Executive Officer of the Hort Council for National Farmers Federation. From growing up on a farm in the Northern Darling Downs, Richard has built a career and reputation as an industry advocate and a public policy professional working across agriculture, trade and renewable energy, healthcare, innovation and Indigenous education with Queensland, Australia and the UK government. He holds qualifications in business management, commerce, public policy and applied ethics and philosophy. Richard will speak today on the findings of the National Farmer Wellbeing Report 2023. Welcome to the webinar, Richard. It's a pleasure to have you here, mate. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and and what you'll talk about a little bit today?
Thank you, Warren. Like Steph, a great privilege to be on this panel with yourself and the others, particularly those people on the panel who are much closer to the ground, who are practitioners. I do policy and somewhat removed, so it's a great privilege to be sharing this panel with the rest of the panelists. I think the introduction you provided for me was enough about me. I might just talk a little bit about the National Farmers Federation. Most people would be familiar with the organisation, but for those who aren't so much, we are the peak advocacy and policy body for the Australian agriculture industry. We typically take an interest in issues that are federal and national issues that cut across commodities and cut across jurisdictions. With a keen interest in mental health, people would be aware that we have a target of 100 billion in farm gate production by 2030, but that can't be at any cost. Agriculture, as we all know, is a human exercise. People are farmers by vocation, and it's not just an industry that people clock in and out of. So our people are so important, and that's why it's a real important priority for the NFF. Thanks.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, no, that was some interesting findings come out of that farmer wellbeing report. So I'm looking forward to the discussion on that. The next speaker I've known for a number of years, and really privileged to be working with you today. But I'd like to introduce Dr. Alison Kennedy, who's the director of the National Centre for Farmer Health. Alison is a behavioural scientist who's lived and worked in Victoria's rural farming communities for almost 2 decades. Her expertise in rural farmer mental health and suicide prevention has drawn a range of innovative techniques, including digital intervention, digital storytelling, community education programs, and peer support models. Alison is passionate about co-designing the centre's research, education and services in collaboration with the community and industry to ensure the centre's work continues to be effective, relevant and tailored to the needs of the rural farming communities. Alison will share information about evidence-based resources and programs co-designed with farmers to prevent and manage risks to mental health in farming communities. So welcome to the webinar, Alison. It's great to see you again. Can you just share a little bit more about yourself, please?
Sure, Warren. Thanks. It's really lovely to be here today. I lead a fantastic team at the National Centre for Farmer Health. We're based in the little agricultural community of Hamilton in southwest Victoria, and I'm very lucky to be living on a farm about 10 k's away from work. Beautiful part of the world, I've got to say. Our centre works across the areas of health, wellbeing and safety. I know we're referring specifically to mental health today, but I think all of those different aspects all contribute to mental health, and likewise mental health contributes to safety risks as well as physical health. So it's really important to remember that. We conduct research. We also provide a range of training opportunities from, helping health professionals deliver better services in farming communities. We train secondary school students in farm safety programs. We run a whole range of professional development for people working in ag as well to build skills and knowledge and confidence, I guess, to support their own and others' mental health. We also, as Warren alluded to, we've developed quite a range of resources and programs to prevent risks to mental health and physical health. And we also get out and deliver on the ground a range of farmer-focused health check programs.
Thanks, Alison. Fantastic work they do, and I've been lucky enough to be at a number of events where I've seen that in action in the groups where I've been speaking. So the work's fantastic. So it's great to have you on the webinar today. The last speaker, and by no means the least, it's the way the list they've written me up. Ginny Stevens is the founder of Active Farmers. She's a mum and a farmer. Ginny spent most of her childhood on a farm in northern Tasmania and has always been passionate about agriculture, farming communities and keeping active. She combines these three loves when she founded Active Farmers in 2015. Before that, Ginny was Gilly-Rood in the NT cattle station prior to starting university, and after 7 years of agribusiness banking, Ginny decided to devote her energies full-time expanding the Active Farmers network and services. Today, Active Farmers runs group fitness classes in 68 farming communities nationwide, amongst many other services and activities. Recently, Ginny has stepped back from the board, a board position, and is now working with her husband, Andy, on their mixed farming operation. And I won't be able to pronounce this name, Ginny, but I'll let you do that. In southern New South Wales. I don't want to stuff that one up. So Ginny will be talking today about building stronger, more resilient communities by staying active. So welcome along today to the webinar. And sorry, you'll have to pronounce the name of your town because I will completely stuff that up.
It's Gunda, and it's actually an Aboriginal term for Northwest Mangappa Station.
Okay.
So it's amazing to be here today, and such a special panel, and I've been following all of your work for a very long time now. So it's a great mixed board to bring together to discuss a really important topic. So yes, I'm just on the Active Farmers board now. I've stepped down from the CEO position, but I'm still managed to spend a fair bit of my time working on Active Farmers, which is something that I'm really, really passionate about. And so for the purpose of today, I'll sort of have my Active Farmers hat on. rather than my mum hat and my farmer hat. So I'm really excited to be here today and listen to all of you speak. So thank you so much for having me.
It's really good to have you along, and once again, through my speaking journey, I've been lucky enough to speak at a couple of active farmer events. One of them, probably one of the most special events that I did, and that was in Warwickmobile, and it was just with a group of fellas, and just that connection and support that the Active Farmers organisation creates for those farming communities, pretty special. So it's really good to have you on. Just to reiterate, if anyone that's on the webinar today has got any questions for the panelists, if you can drop them in the Q&A box, which is down along the bottom of your screen, direct them at the specific speaker if you can. We'll endeavour to answer those questions at the end of our discussion panel now, and as I said, there's going to be a number of questions directed at our panel members, and it'll be interesting to see the answers to these questions, and hopefully shed some more light on why mental health in agriculture is so important, and some of the resources and some of the strategies that we can use to make sure that we're looking after ourselves, because as I learnt the hard way, as farmers, we're the number one assets on our farm. So doesn't matter how flash our tractors or our crops or anything are, if we're not operating at 100%, then our farming businesses aren't going to be running at 100%. So I'll kick off the questions, and the first question is directed at you, Richard. And that first question is, what is the National Farmer Wellbeing Report, and why is it important?
Thanks, Warren. I'll take that as two separate questions. Firstly, the report, what is it? I think I might just take a little bit of time just to set it in some context. Norco, the dairy cooperative in northern New South Wales, reached out to the NFF to partner in a survey and a subsequent report. That was in late 2022. Of course, this followed really damaging flooding in the Lismore area and the northern New South Wales area, where Norco suppliers and dairy farmers are based. I won't remind people of some of the imagery that came along with that particular event. It was horrific. So it was kind of in that context that they reached out, wanting to survey not just their own region, but also the whole of Australia. And so we partnered with them in that. We surveyed 1,300 farmers across the country in February of this year, which is a really great response. And from that, we developed a range of insights. To the second part of your question, why is it important? Well, in one sort of respect, it's not, because the findings of the survey were not news, and certainly not news to anyone who has spent any time in this field, in rural and regional mental health. It just reaffirmed, I think, our understanding of the really poor state of mental health and wellbeing across the sector. So not important in that sense, but I think it has served as a bit of a lightning rod and a really important reminder. I think that was timely then. It's still really relevant now, I think, with significant sort of seasonal and other headwinds that we're pushing into. Some of the high level findings that really got a lot of attention. 45% of farmers surveyed said that they had thoughts of self-harm or suicide, and 30%, 1 in 3, had attempted self-harm or suicide. I think for many people, even in this field, just to think about that number, that's shocking. That's certainly the response that we've had to the report. And the other findings were really around causes. Unsurprisingly, potentially at that time, natural disasters was the leading cause of the poor wellbeing and mental health, followed by financial stress, and related to that, inflation and cost pressures.
Yeah. Pretty much across the board. And as you said, like for anyone working on the ground in the mental health field, they probably wasn't a surprising finding in that report. So what are the main recommendations that the National Farmer Wellbeing Report makes addressing poor farmer mental health?
Yeah, thanks. So another partner in this project was the Black Dog Institute, and so they did help shape up some recommendations that came from this report. And in summary, those recommendations kind of fall in three areas. The first was, I guess, taking on a bit of responsibility, checking in on a mate. This idea that sort of the first front line of mental health and wellbeing is peer support, and so that was a recommendation from the survey that I guess we need to support individual farmers playing that role. Not an easy role to play, and one that I think farmers probably need some support and some training in doing. So that was the first piece. Related to that, Norco themselves are taking a leadership kind of role here. They have invested themselves in their own staff and skilling them up to have those sorts of conversations. Norco is not just a processor, but they also have a retail, rural merchandising part of the business, quite extensive in the regions they operate in. So skilling up their staff, and they're calling on other agribusinesses, other supply chain operators to make that same investment. Outside of peers and other farmers, the people that talk to farmers the most are often suppliers of agricultural inputs. So skilling up that group of people, that cohort, to have better conversations around mental health and their well-being. Lastly, there's a broad call for further and greater investment by government in services for regional and rural communities. That was a pretty blanket call for greater resources, and something that we are doing some further work on is sort of making more specific recommendations to government about where that investment could be best made.
Yeah, and yes, definitely. Once again, anyone that works in rural regional communities know that sometimes access to services is something that people struggle with, and arming people with the tools, especially what I call those frontline workers, like the agros and the rural store managers, and the people that are seeing people on a daily basis. They're the ones that need to be skilled up. So thanks for that, Richard. That's fantastic. The next question is directed at you, Alison. What advice would you give someone who wanted to prevent the risks to mental health in their farming workplace, and what does the National Centre for Farmer Health Resources and what National Centre for Farmer Health Resources would you recommend for them?
Yeah, thanks, Warren, and thanks for that introduction, Richard. I think it segues quite nicely into kind of what I was going to say next, in that I think farmers and people in farming communities more broadly are often very willing to provide support to each other when it comes to challenging times and people struggling with their mental health. I think maybe what we're less good at is actually putting some effort and prioritizing that prevention of risks to mental health, and that's a really important part of the work that we do here. So I guess I would just like to highlight some of the really practical things that people can do within their workplace to help prevent some of those risks. I guess in all of our farming workplaces, whatever sector we work in, and particularly, I guess, in horticulture when we're reflecting on the recent weather events, but there's a lot of, a sense of lack of control, and it's a very high demand working environment as well. So I think we need to start to look at some of the things that we can do to improve people's sense of control, and to also manage some of those really high demands that people are facing. So within a workplace, I'm thinking, from a hort perspective, where you might have people employed in your business, it's really important to make sure that people have really clear job roles and expectations. Does everybody have a PD that they know exactly why they're employed, what they're employed to do, and what their specific role is. That's a really important way to give people a bit of accountability and a bit of sense of control over their working environment. It's also important to identify, well, in really busy periods, what are the high priority tasks? What are the things that we need to focus on now, and what are the things that maybe we can let slide till next week? It's really important to get everybody involved in the workplace in making decisions. And, you know, how do we make decisions? How do we assign tasks? Always encouraging people to suggest improvements and efficiencies within the workplace. You know, get them involved in that process of change and the process of assigning tasks. Really important also to make sure that people's skills and their capabilities and their training is actually focused on the job that they're doing and is adequate for the job that they're doing. Making sure also that people know who to turn to when they need to ask for assistance or they have a bit of a challenge. There's nothing worse, I think, in a workplace than getting stuck on a task and not knowing what to do next. It can be particularly stressful. And then also that whole piece around communication, you know, regularly meeting with your team, whether it be, you know, your staff or your farming family, to raise problems, to talk about solutions, to unpick challenges, and also very importantly to celebrate success. I think we often sort of focus on the negatives and how to address those, but it's also really important to acknowledge and reward success. And the second part of your question, Warren, I think was about resources. I think in terms of preventing risks to mental health in the workplace, I'd recommend people jump on our website and look for the campfire resources. We've got a whole host of podcasts, blogs, a lot of which include stories of lived experience around preventing risks. So, you know, what can we learn from our peers in this space? I think that's very important. Look for all of the campfire materials on the National Centre website.
Thanks, Alison. That is very reassuring, some of that early stuff that you were just saying, because as a manager of large operations, and whether they were dairy or other operations that I've managed, it's one of the things that identifying people's skills is really important for their mental health, but also giving people clear direction on their role. And one of the things that I used to do was hold why we do what we do meetings, so every second Friday, just to be able to reiterate why we're doing some of the stuff we're doing. So everyone's got a bit of buy-in as well, which is really good, because it becomes fairly isolating if you're just turning up for work and just being, you know, directed to do a role and you don't know why you're doing it, and you get no fulfillment or no purpose from that. So some really good points there, Alison. Second question to you is, what does the evidence say about effectively building resilience in farming communities?
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess resilience it's a bit of a buzzword sometimes, and, you know, we toss it around quite frequently, and I'm not sure that, you know, people always use it in the same way. There's various meanings. So when I'm thinking of resilience, I'm thinking about a focus on sort of strategies that help people effectively manage change, with very changing environment in agriculture, constantly managing change, but doing that in a way that sort of manages or restores or even improves your well-being. So that's kind of the context that I'm coming from when I'm talking about resilience. And we've done a fair bit of work in this space. So we've been doing a piece of research and then supporting a whole range of resilience initiatives that are working across Victoria, and have learnt a lot from that process about what works and what really helps building resilience within farming communities. So one of those is, I'm going to go back again to that whole idea of prevention So much better if we have that kind of focus on prevention rather than being very reactive to situations all of the time. It just helps people to prepare in advance for challenges and manage that, manage their resilience. Really important also to take a coordinated approach. So, whether that's in a whole of community approach or whether that's down to an individual, and actually surrounding yourself with people who you can leverage off and feed off positive energy and resources and information. Resilience does require a sustained effort. It's not something that you can just focus on once. It's something that, needs sort of constant reviewing and constant work. So that's also important. In terms of kind of developing up initiatives within communities or workplaces, it's really important that they are place-based, in that they reflect, I guess, the needs of that local community and addresses the local challenges. Also, what else have I got here? Boosting and strengthening activities that are already happening in community. So let's not reinvent the wheel here. Let's leverage off other activities, bringing groups together that are already coming together for another purpose, and take those opportunities to build in some resilience and some wellbeing materials within those activities. And then where we are, I guess, developing resource materials, if we're putting together flyers or information booklets, make sure that they're really complementary to the activities that you're running on the ground, and actually encourage people then to take action, to learn from whatever activity you've been running, and put it into practice. So that's always very important, I think, that practical aspect and that inspiring action.
Yeah, thanks, Alison. Some really good, effective tips there. Ginny, this question's to you. The Regional Australian Institute undertook some research, a research program to analyse the impact of active farmers in small communities. Can you tell me what did that research find?
Sure, Warren. So interestingly enough, I guess in the very, very beginning, active farmers was, I guess the primary benefit of active farmers was improving physical health. The research found, yes, active farmers is getting participants moving, not only at class, but just more in general, 8 or 9 out of 10, exercising more in general. But the other pillars that we looked at were the social connectedness and the community resilience. And so it found that people that were attending classes were feeling, community connectedness and the social aspect, and then the mental health was separate. So the second pillar was the mental health, and the participants were feeling, 9 in 10 were feeling uplifted after attending classes, reporting feelings of happiness, optimism, energy, and individual resilience. And what was really interesting, that the third pillar, looking at the social connection, found that active farmers not only building individual resilience, but that the community felt that having the program was building their community resilience, and also their social fabric. And I actually hadn't heard of that word before, or that term. And I found that really interesting, that I guess the community felt that by coming together regularly, by improving their physical health, it was therefore improving their mental health, not only from the physical benefits, but just by getting together as a community regularly, so that they found that they were becoming more resilient. Because then when a challenging time comes along, as you just mentioned, Alison, there's already an activity or something that's happening in the community that's formed a strong foundation to lean upon in tough times. So I really think that the people coming together and seeing each other regularly means that you're in a far better place to notice changes in behaviour. You're going to notice if someone doesn't turn up. So you have far more people in the community looking out for each other. Whereas if you don't see people regularly in the community, it's very easy to put on a brave face. So maybe you're not actually going to notice changes in behavior if you're not seeing people regularly. So we were really excited to find what the research said, and the main areas for improvement for us was basically our marketing, and that the existing participants just want more people to have access to the program and come along. So that's a bit in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, fantastic. And I think also by having those, regular catch-ups, it gives people purpose as well. If they're really struggling, it gives them that purpose that, something that's bigger than them, and, to turn up and make sure that, they're still engaged in the community is really important. Active Farmers promotes regular group fitness classes in small farming communities. What are the benefits and how can people get started?
Yeah, so the benefits, I guess, really were just summarised in that research. So I won't sort of waste precious time. But really, just the physical health, the mental health, community connectedness, and then, we want people to be going home feeling stronger physically and mentally without really realizing it. So it's something that's similar when you're in a team sport. You're going home feeling really good because you're connected with your team, and you are also feeling fit, which helps, your whole mind and body feeling stronger. So you're going to be more resilient when tough times come along. So we operate in every state in the country, which is awesome. It's very easy to set up Active Farmers. We run our classes, weekly classes in at the footy oval or the town hall, or sometimes in the schools will let us have classes in the schools. And then we basically, our biggest challenge is finding a trainer. So we do require our trainers to be qualified, Cert 3 in personal training minimum, or a PE teacher or a physio. So once we find that person and we find a venue, we're off and running, and we're often running on a regular basis. So we don't sort of just come in, do 4 weeks and then leave. We actually set up, for a very long term, as long as the community will have us, we'll be there. There's actually a scholarship program open right now, where anyone that's living in a community who would like to start it up can actually have their whole training funded, and their equipment. And so that's pretty exciting. So there's 47 trainers in total.
Yeah. And that's probably like most skills in rural communities, it's probably sometimes they're a little bit hard. That's why some communities struggle to get groups off the ground, is because they can't find a trainer. Is that the case? Yes,
and someone once said to me, "Oh, do you have a maternity leave policy?" And I said, "Well, I wish. I mean, it's not like there's an abundance of qualified personal trainers, in Mangapla where there's 100 people live." Yeah. So yeah, it is a challenge. We're trying to work through it with this scholarship program, but we do also love to find people that are already qualified.
Fantastic. Thanks for that, Ginny. Steph, this question is for you. For women in farming, balancing farm demands, work and family life can be particularly demanding. How can women navigate these multiple responsibilities and care for their own mental health?
Yeah, I think it's an area that's been fairly invisible for a fair while. I think farming mental health in general, but the role that women play has been going along kind of in the background. And I think it's just starting to acknowledge that there are a lot of challenges and I guess extra burdens that are sometimes put on the back of women. So a couple of months ago ran a Change the Picture campaign, which shared insights from farming women across Australia on the mental health challenges and also the strengths. And I think a few of the things that came out from that was really about, giving yourself that permission to take care of yourself. I think very often women are giving everything to everyone else around them, pouring everything into the farm or the family. And if we burn ourselves out, then there's nothing left at the end of the day for anyone else. So I think it's that giving yourself permission, but also recognizing that caring for your well-being doesn't necessarily have to be stock standard and look the same as everyone else's. I think especially because our farming lives vary so much, it's not necessarily going to be doable to get up and do an hour of exercise, half an hour of journaling, drink a warm cup of lemon water, do some mindfulness, and then take on the day with peace and calm as your kids get up quietly. Doesn't necessarily happen, but just really working out what works for you. So it might be getting active by doing some squats while you boil the kettle, or prioritizing, like I've realized even for myself, giving myself permission to say yes when I run into a friend at school drop off and she says, can we catch up for a coffee? Like my automatic answer was always, no, don't have time. And then going, okay, yes, I can do that. I think also strengthening the relationships, whether it's for men or women, strengthening relationships is something that I think is absolutely vital in farming. The majority of farming businesses are family owned. And I think we talk a lot about reaching out to a mate or connecting with our mates, but there's not a lot of conversation around connecting to your partner and actually talking with your partner. And at the end of the day, it's our partners who know exactly what's going on behind the scenes, who do know the financial pressures or the day-to-day challenges. So I think just starting little and building that connection with your partner, whether it's your husband or your wife, or to really come together as a team and look at, okay, how can we make our team, whether it's in the home or on the farm or all of the above, work more effectively together.
Fantastic. And I think that's, really important. Important thing. Working together is a really important thing as well. Like, as you're not in it on your own, and making sure you're looking out for each other in that farming partnership. In your experience, what are some of the unique stresses and challenges that women in farming face in terms of their mental health, and how do they differ from challenges that are experienced by men in the same profession?
It's interesting. I think it's kind of more of a culmination of so many things. So now, I guess, maybe in comparison to 50 years ago, women are a lot more hands-on, both on the farm and then very hands-on often with family, or doing their own off-farm business and role as well. And so there's kind of been an assumption in the past that, men are concerned and aware of what's going on the financial side of the farm, but women are just as aware of what's happening there. So there's kind of the pressures of knowing what's happening on the business side, juggling just the multiple demands of time, of wanting to be hands-on on farm, or needing to be hands-on doing parenting. Often I think in farming, it does often still fall to the woman to be the kind of default parent and the automatic, the one who drops everything to do school pickup, or drops everything to go and pick up a broken part for machinery or different things there. But there's also that added factor of extra isolation. If you've moved onto farm, you might have moved away from kind of family and friends. And I think even, like, I know this personal experience, but also talking to other women, there again has been this assumption, well, women reach out for support, or we talk to friends, but so often women just aren't finding time for that, because if you've got kids, anyone knows that as soon as you pick up the phone, kids go haywire. Or if you're working off farm, chances are you're in a job that you can't just sit on the phone all day. Whereas I know for my husband, him and his mates talk constantly because they're all farmers. And so while you're driving a tractor or shifting sheep or doing different things, you can talk on the phone. So there's a lot more of that isolation and disconnect away as well. And a lot of women I've spoken to, it's just been that feeling of wearing so many hats, being pulled in so many different directions, and not feeling like you're doing a good enough job of any of them.
Yeah. Anyone that follows your socials, Steph, will know that you wear multiple hats during your day, and you do a great job. So, is there any personal tips that you use in your day that you helps you through your day when from driving the chaser bin to wrangling the kids to running your business, all that sort of stuff?
Yes, definitely a juggler here. I think it's about making it as small as possible. So for me, it really is the littlest steps, whether it's just about getting present in the moment. And again, that might not be doing a 20-minute mindfulness exercise. For me, it's literally just taking 2 seconds or 30 seconds to focus on my feet on the ground and get myself out of my head, which might be thinking about tomorrow or replaying the argument I had last night. So just focusing on my feet on the ground. Taking that time actually, like when I am present, to notice and appreciate what actually is happening. Again, probably stepping out of those judgments. Like, for example, last night it was 8 o'clock at night. My boys had just finished drafting off a little mob of sheep, and I'm up at the sheep yards trying to get them to come inside, and then they're like, well, can we play footy, Mum? I'm like, okay. So we actually did just do a 5-minute game of kicking the footy around in the sheep yards, and because of that, it made the transition back inside easier. Not to say I do that perfectly all the time, but I think giving yourself a little bit of permission and grace to stuff up and then get back on track the next day or the next hour is probably important as well.
Fantastic. Thanks, Steph. And this question here is probably directed at both Steph and Ginny. Ginny had mentioned about building stronger communities, more resilient communities by staying active. How does physical activity contribute to the mental health and wellbeing of women in the agricultural sector? And are there any specific activities that resonate well with this demographic?
Sure. I think we actually did a myth-busting series a few years ago because, unfortunately, the name active farmers sort of alludes, a lot of people think, oh, only farmers can go. But it's just sort of, as the findings from, say, the Farmer Wellbeing Survey, farmers are sort of often at higher risk. So they need probably the most hard work to get them to classes. But our classes mostly are made up of, I think, between some communities 50-50, some are all men, like Rotenaville, some are more women. So across the country, I think we have 35% men, 65% women. So Active Farmers really focuses on the whole community, because whether you're on a farm as a farmer, farmer's wife, or living in the community, everyone's in it together, and adverse events affect everybody. So we certainly welcome all walks of life to the classes, but the mums really, it's their time once or twice a week to get out of the house, get away from the children, away from the duties, do some exercise, talk to some other mums who are going through, exactly what you've just outlined, Steph. I hear you. And just sort of realize that they're in it together with other people in their community. So not only they can sort of download, connect with their community, and also feel better from doing some exercise, and then go home feeling refreshed and as stronger, both physically and mentally. And I mean, the classes, we're not training for the Olympics. If you are training for the Olympics, they're probably not for you. So we all the trainers do a variety of exercises, but they're generally, strength based, a bit of cardio, maybe some do a bit of boxing, but just keeping it a bit interesting and a bit different. A lot of it, the classes are all designed around time, so it doesn't matter how fit you are. You can just go at your own pace, because it's not like you're going out and say, do 5 laps of the oval at your own time. That wouldn't work. So, in 30 seconds, do this exercise. So people can sort of go at their own pace and not feel as though they're holding anyone up, and they don't have to feel embarrassed, because there's just all walks of life that come. But, I am a huge believer, and I know for me, for my own health and mental health. Exercise is really important for that, and I think it really helps people with their own confidence and their own sense of self if they are feeling fit. It all connects all the way up through your brain and sleeping and eating and energy levels. So I think it's really, really important for mums to try their hardest to at least do some group fitness, even if it's just once a week. I think there's still a huge benefit from that.
Yeah.
Can I just add in with that as well? Like, I think the group fitness programs are fantastic, and I think it's great that there's lots of in-person ones which give that opportunity to get off farm, and there's also now a few like kind of join from your living room, quite a few online ones as well, which is great. And I think it's then also just about finding those ways to bring activity into your everyday. So like for me, it is often just about like physically getting active on the farm, or those spontaneous ways of getting moving, playing footy with the kids. So yeah, I think it's needing to have those reminders to get yourself moving, but also like movement in whatever way it looks and works for you. So it might be kind of putting a playlist on, and it's not necessarily the playlist of, if you've got kids, what they love, but like the music that you loved going out and dancing to, or just finding ways to move your body, I think is really important.
Thanks for that, Steph and Ginny. There's a couple of, just to wrap up, and to all the panelists, I really appreciate all the answering those questions and giving some some really great answers, and hopefully the people that are on the webinar today will be able to take stuff away, some interesting tips away from that. There's a couple of questions in the Q&A, and one of these questions, I'm going to direct this at Richard and kind of paraphrase it a little bit, but some of the impacts of high-level decisions, on farming communities. How do we explain to those policymakers, some of the impacts of some of these decisions that are made that impact these farming communities? How can we better explain the impacts to those, I suppose, those higher level people?
Great question. I think the question references power lines here, but there are other decisions of government. There's been a decision today around water in the Murray-Darling, a decision affecting sheep growers in the West about exporting their livestock overseas. How do we convince government? I think the NFF typically takes a couple of different approaches here. We try and assemble as much evidence to support the case. And so in this instance, it would be running surveys and engaging directly with people on the ground to get a feel and try and quantify that impact. But I think by far and away the most compelling, as we all know, is telling stories where humans are built to send and receive stories, and we need people to tell that story. We need farmers that are affected by each of these individual decisions. We need to put them in front of ministers, essentially, and that is what the NFF always seeks to do. People like me, they hear from all the time. Our job is to find the right spokespeople, the people who can sort of reflect directly that experience to decision makers to ensure that these things are considered, because they are hard to quantify.
Yeah, and they're hard to sometimes explain that impact. There's an interesting question here about maybe, or it's a statement kind of question. Maybe, I'm just trying to find it now. It was somewhere down near the bottom here. Or maybe it's gone. I can't find it. Also, it was discussing that there is already groups and sporting clubs and that, and church groups available in a lot of rural and regional communities. I suppose that's with you, Ginny, of trying to build on that as well. That's one of those things, as Alison said, we don't need to recreate the wheel. If there are already stuff based in communities, we can work from that. I'm just trying to look through here. Steph's answered a couple of these questions.
Warren, I'm happy to jump on quickly with the answer. And Alison might have some thoughts as well around the question from Jessica around mental health awareness.
Yeah.
Because I definitely agree. I think there's been a big push over the last kind of 10, 15 years around mental health awareness and looking out for the signs of depression or signs of stress. But I think what we now need to do is shift towards mental health skills training and doing that across the board, so that we're not just waiting until we need to go to a psychologist to learn mental health skills, that there's a lot that can be learned and kind of shared from a community level, which is a lot of the work that I do. And my view is kind of that if we can build that capacity in psychological skills and general, I guess, mental flexibility, then we're going to reduce that pressure on that. There's always going to be the clinical need, but we can reduce that pressure at the pointy end of the scale, so that those the clinical services can open up more for the people that really need them. And so, I think what Jessica said is needing to get more awareness around that, what might be tailored remote support. And like you flagged, there are a few services available. I think it's one thing that I'd like to kind of note is that for clinical services, there are a lot of pretty much all psychologists now after COVID provide telehealth services. I didn't add it to the resources, but I'll send it to Alex. I have a list of psychologists who have a connection or understanding of farming, because I think people do sometimes want that link in there. So I'll send that through. And I know that National Centre for Farmer Health has a connection with psychologists as well. So it is available. But it's a needing to address it at multi-levels.
Yeah.
Would you like to add to that, Alison? Sorry.
I will. Thanks, Warren. I'll add a little bit to that too. And yes, Steph is right. We've worked with an online psychology service to upskill their psychologists so that they have an understanding of the context within farming communities, so they get the risks and they understand how farmers are exposed to poor mental health. So in order to be able to have a better connection, I guess, with people in farming communities. But one other aspect that we're doing, and I think it sort of links back to the conversation initially and the recommendations that were coming out of the Norco report around peer support. We're currently working to develop a model of peer-led mental health support. So that will involve community members being trained to deliver evidence-based psychological therapy within their community to their peers. So I think that it will really tick a whole range of boxes. It'll not only fill the gap in mental health services in rural communities, but it'll provide a service that from people that completely understand where you are, where you're coming from, what, the challenges that you're facing. So it'll just make it a whole lot easier and less stigmatizing as well. So watch this space.
Thanks, Alison. Well, we're rapidly running out of time. We need to wrap this up, and I'd just once again like to thank all the panelists for their input today and for sharing their wisdom. That's it's really important, I think, to share wisdom with our communities, because that's how we're going to come up with solutions to the problems that we face. So to each and every one of you, thank you very much for joining us today and doing that. To AUSVEG and Hort Innovation, thank you for facilitating this webinar. And to you, the people that joined us today, thank you very much for joining us. And I hope you got a lot out of today's webinar. Until next time, thank you very much, and we'll speak again. Thank you.